hosted by Tony Gapperstone. Thanks for tuning in. It's showtime.
It's showtime, everybody. What's up? Episode 309 of the Brave Maker podcast. I'm Tony Gapperstone. I'm a writer, director, actor, producer. I'm based in San Francisco Bay Area, working from the Bay to LA with our production company and nonprofit Brave Maker, which is really dedicated to creating change through entertainment. We believe in the power of storytelling to make connections, give people a sense of belonging, to increase and improve mental health, see racial justice, gender equity, and LGBT rights come to the head. We're very excited about the work that we're doing and having these important conversations with creators of all kinds. So every single Thursday, I am here on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and all the places. You can watch us live or on the replay. If you're here today watching live, we encourage you, jump in, make a comment, ask a question. I love being able to talk to filmmakers and actors who are out there in the business, which is not easy right now to make it possible. It takes a lot of perseverance and grit. And today I'm talking to an actor who has been in the business and doing some things and is still making a name for himself. Welcome to the show, Marcos Jose James.
Yes,
what's up,
sir,
Marcos?
Thanks. Good, man. Thanks for having me. I love your opening graphics and the music and everything. It's amazing.
Right on, dude. Yeah, it's like, make your own show. I've always wanted to do stuff like this for years. And instead of waiting for somebody else to give me the opportunity, I'm like, well, I'll just build my own show. And for over 300 episodes, we've been doing Brave Maker work for 7 years. It's really, really cool. I get to talk to people like you. And you and I, I feel like you popped up somehow in like the Explore page for me or someone to follow. I started following you. I was like, oh, this guy's got some cool stuff going on. The smoldering, the working out, the Game of Thrones,
exactly,
all that stuff. I was like, wow, I got to get to know. So let's hear a little bit about you, Marcos. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Marcos James. I'm based in Los Angeles and I work as an actor. Outside of that, my interests revolve around health and fitness. I do work out a lot, probably too much, to be honest with you. And just exploring and living through the entertainment industry in LA, specifically film and television. Before this, I was involved in theater. So the first major production that I did was The Lion King, the West End show in London. And after that, I worked on a multitude of theatrical productions. Then my first film was a film called Reunion with Ashley Walters, who was in Top Boy, etc. And then things kind of exploded when I did Game of Thrones, and my life completely changed. Got signed in LA, and here I am a few years later. So it's definitely been a journey, and I'm grateful for it all, to be honest.
Bro, being on Game of Thrones, I mean, speaking of life-changing,
yes,
like that is like iconic. And you also got to be killed on Game of Thrones, which is
you know what? I was thinking about this the other day, and I seem to get killed in a lot of these shows. Because I was watching my show reel recently, and I was like, So I did a movie called Headless Horseman. I get killed. Game of Thrones, I get killed. And there are at least 2 other productions, and I'm like, I need to put a stop to this at some point in time. So as my career progresses, I may have to put in like a clause that says the character does not die, or does not die in too much of a gruesome way. But honestly, man, like I can't say enough how being in Game of Thrones impacted not only my career but my life trajectory in totality. I remember I was in London when I did the casting, and the casting was they weren't very specific. My agent wasn't very specific about what show it was until the day before the casting. And so the casting breakdown was quite interesting because it said somebody who's muscular and athletic with a shaved head and olive complexion, or around about there, ethnically ambiguous, or North African or Middle Eastern, or around about that kind of look. And I said to myself, And also, they were very specific about the height. So the guy was between 5'10" and 6 foot, and I am 5'10". And I said, I think they're looking for me, to be honest. And so just from the breakdown of the character, I knew that I was this person. And so the mission for me was not to overplay the character, but to be exactly what they were looking for, because I knew that they were already looking for me. So I just had to go into the casting room and just be, obviously with the nuances and emotional resonance of the character, but essentially I just had to be a version of me. And a very interesting story about that casting is that I only had one casting for Game of Thrones. I had one 5-minute casting, because normally they have the casting, then they have a callback, and then they have another callback after that. I auditioned for, the casting director was Nina Gold, and I auditioned for Nina Gold's assistant, right? So this is probably like, you know, the first rounds, kind of like the pre-audition stage, the major rounds. I had envisioned exactly what I was going to do down to the T, and it's exactly what played out in the audition. And right after I completed the audition, like 2 days later, I got a call from my agent saying they're canceling all callbacks. They're canceling everybody else who was booked to come in to audition for the show, and you got the part. And that's how it happened. They canceled all the callbacks, and I had one 5-minute audition, and that was it. So,
dude, congrats. Your working out pays off, right? There are just
Yes.
things when you have the look for it. You have to, you must have to show your body a lot on camera, and that's a good thing, you know?
So the interesting thing is that right about the time that I auditioned for Game of Thrones, I was working out extra hard for some reason. I was working out with a friend of mine, and I kind of like increased the days that I was working out, you know, my exercises changed, and I kind of peaked at that moment right at the perfect time, because for Game of Thrones in peak physical condition. So it all played out perfectly, to be honest. And yes, there's a lot of shirtless stuff going on in my career in general, to be honest.
In this scene, if you're watching right now, Marcos gets his neck slit. It's pretty gruesome.
Yeah.
There's also some female nudity in there as well. It's I mean, if you watch Game of Thrones is just there's nudity everywhere all the time. So you have to be comfortable with that kind of thing if you're a viewer of Game of Thrones, let alone an actor. Can you talk about the set and the being on the experience and just how they went about doing that? Because we are talking a lot about these days intimacy coordinators. If there's any kind of simulated sex or nudity in any way, there has to be someone on set that is making sure the actors are protected and making sure there's a liaison with the director. Can you talk about that process at all?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll talk about the experience in totality, and then I'll get to that one. Going on set, so I filmed my scenes in Northern Ireland and also in Croatia. So going to Northern Ireland, you've been to Disney World, right? I suppose, and I suppose lots of people have been there. So when you go into the studio lot, and I kid you not, so the car is driving in, and as soon as the car drives in, there are a bunch of Unsulleds. There were a bunch of Unsulleds rehearsing a fighting scene. So we're driving into the studio lot, and you just see Unsulleds running everywhere.
Now, for those who don't know what Unsullied is,
right.
Talk about that.
So the Unsulleds are an army, and I was the leader of the Unsullied army, and their other leader was Grey Worm. So he was a series regular. I was a major guest star for the show. So there were two leaders of the Unsulleds. I was one of them, and then Grey Worm was the other one. So the Unsulleds, you know, they all had on the helmets and the warrior costumes, etc. And so driving in, you see a bunch of Unsulleds, and then you just see characters all over the place. Like people rehearsing, people like walking with coffee cups, coffee mugs, that kind of thing. And it's like you enter another world by itself, and it's all Game of Thrones characters. It's all Game of Thrones now memorabilia. Everything is Game of Thrones. It's like a Game of Thrones Disney World. So that was the first thing that was really interesting, and the way they film is that they have different, when we're filming on the studio lot, they have different locations set up throughout the lot. So they'll film one scene in one location, and then the same crew will run to another part of the lot to film another scene, and then the same crew will run to another lot to film another scene. So they were really efficient, and by season 5, which I'm in, they had that methodology like down pat. So they would film several scenes almost at the same time. So they would shout cut on one scene, then run to another setup, shoot one other scene, and then run to another setup and shoot one other scene. With regards to the intimacy, now that scene was my co-star in that scene was Mina Ryan, an amazing actress who was also in Warrior Nun. She had a more difficult task than I did. All I had to do was take my shirt off, which was fine. But Mina had to deliver her lines while taking her entire clothes off. And for me, I just had to remain in character, but be neutral at that point in time, because I didn't want my expressions to kind of throw her off in that situation, because she had to deal with the cameraman, the director, the assistant director, a whole bunch of people, and it was all men. It was all men in the room. Not a multitude, but enough, I think, to make that experience maybe slightly a little bit uncomfortable. So I was very mindful of that, and I stayed in character, and I just remained neutral, so that she could do what she was doing without being affected by, an involuntary reaction by my part. In terms of the intimacy aspect of it, we did have a talk beforehand, but I think that particular part was so quick because she only had to do it for a few seconds and then cover up again. So it wasn't something that was ongoing, but it was just that moment she had to take her clothes off and deliver the lines. I think I just had to be very mindful of what her experience would be in that situation as a female doing that action in front of all these guys. With regards to Mina and I being in bed, that scene, the focus was more on the coordination of getting the knife around my throat more than anything else. So the intimacy aspect of it was an important part of the storyline, obviously, but it wasn't necessarily the focus, the technical focus right there. So everybody was relaxed. She was relaxed. It was great. I think the only kind of interesting moment for her would have been the revelation of the physicality while saying the lines for a few seconds and then covering up again, which was a big deal. So in terms of the intimacy coordination, we didn't really need that for the second aspect of it. But what we did need was to coordinate the cutting of the throat to my reaction to the blood coming out. Because the way that they did that was that it was a prosthetic neck, by the way. So
I just had a neck slit scene that I got to do a couple weeks ago. It's so fun. Did you have the tubing through the neck? Yeah.
So the prosthetic neck, I was on my side, and then there was a tube going through the prosthetic neck, and it was there. And then they had a pump that was off like a few feet away. And so we had to coordinate with them pushing the pump, the blood coming up, the slit throat, and then my eyes opening. So that was the main focus right there. We did that shot quite a few times, but it was quite interesting. It was also quite funny, to be honest, because you had somebody like offset, like pumping this thing to get the blood, to get the blood right at the correct mark, so that when the director said action, then as soon as I felt the knife, I would open up and then the blood would come out. So that was really, really interesting.
How many times do you have to do it?
I want to say about 8.
Wow.
It was quite a few times.
So that must be a whole day, because you have to clean up and get, all the new things, all that stuff.
So that scene was the last scene of that particular day. And I do remember that one took the longest, because at one point, like the thing got stuck, and then we had to start again, and then the knife fell, and then we had to take it up, and then it. But I think filming was going so well that everybody was quite relaxed, and we were having a great time by that time. You know, I understood the character in totality, and so I was able to just be the character on set. I didn't really have to think about what my expression would be with my throat getting cut. Obviously, I'm in shock and horror. You know what I mean? So that was a secondary thought in my head, because I was so at one with the character that I was just able to react. So by that time, it was just getting the technical specifications down for the scene: the pumping, the blood, the throat, the eyes opening, that kind of thing. The first day of Game of Thrones was a little bit interesting. I tell you why. Because I turned up on set, and this was the first day of filming, was me in a studio they had filled the studio with sand. So that opening scene where I walk and the harpy comes down the mountain, so that was all done in green screen, and the harpy came down in post-production. Anyway, so I'm walking through the sand, and I had to coordinate my steps with a robotic image that they had on a monitor, because they had to feed that image, obviously, to get the CGI correct and whatever. So they put me on my mark, but they didn't explain what was going to happen. So they were so secretive about anything that I didn't actually know what scene I was doing. So they just put me on this mark in a pile of sand, and this was my first day on set. You know, I stood there going, okay, am I going to have to stop production to ask, what scene are we filming?
What are we doing right now?
You know, this is like a huge production. You kind of want to just go into it and just at least act as if you know what's going on, right? So I'm standing there in the sand pit, and everybody's running around going, all right, sound and camera and lights and quiet on set. And I'm like, okay, I still don't know what scene I'm doing. Maybe I should ask. And then right as they were going to say action, I put my hand up. And I said, so what scene is this? You know, and what are my actions? And then that's when the director came over and he told me what was happening and stuff. But you have to understand, but by season 5, they were operating on kind of like autopilot. So they were just shooting scenes one after the other, one after the other, one after the other. And so I think by that time, like, it was such a well-oiled machine that sometimes they would probably just assume that the actor knows what they're doing and they can just shout action and everything will go to plan. So that was the most interesting thing about that day. But overall, it was amazing. It was an amazing experience. Unforgettable. I was hoping that I would be able to take something from, you know, memorabilia, the socks or the something, but I had to account for every single thing, right up to the underwear. So, you know, because they knew how big the show was, and they knew it was going to be like a huge deal even after it ended. So I had to like tick all these boxes and give everything back. Yeah, it was amazing.
Being on Game of Thrones, what a cool opportunity. But you've been in so many other things too. So let's talk about your work. And you know, you tend, like you said, you tend to get cast in certain roles. You're doing stunts, you're getting beat up, you're getting killed, you're flexing the muscles. You do have a really awesome and unique look, and I feel like there's just so many shows that need that kind of vibe. You know, someone who, you know, has the ability to do a gun, or who's breaking in, or who's chasing some people down. Talk a little bit about your casting type and kind of what you've experienced as you're doing these films and these roles. And, you know, if you have any like thoughts about, because sometimes people don't want to be typecast, but other times it's like, at least you're getting cast in a way. Some people would just, you know, kill to get cast. Talk about that whole experience from your end.
Yeah, and being cast consistently as well. I'm at peace with it, and I understand it. I think there is, beyond the physicality, there's a certain strength that comes out of me when you meet me, physically, and in terms of my character. I have a very solid personality, and it's quite strong. You know, I don't present as weak or soft and this kind of thing. So I think the characters that I play make sense for me. And even before getting in film and television, even in theater, oh, I'm just watching the scene now where where the fighting is happening. It's quite brutal, to be honest. And I'll talk about that in a second. But even before getting into film and television, I was always getting cast as a warrior or a soldier or some kind of fighter. And before getting into the arts, by the way, I was actually a hockey player. And I did track, like I did 100 meters and 200 meters. So I was always very physically active. And so I took that competitive and kind of like athletic strength into film and television with me, and it hasn't left. So before getting into film and television, for example, I did a production called Aida. And in Aida, this was in London, a huge production, I played a warrior, like a samurai warrior. I was trained in Qigong. I was trained in Japanese sword fighting. I did extensive training in stage combat. And the audition process for Aida, the first audition was an obstacle course. So all the actors were there, and we had to go through an obstacle course, climbing ropes, jumping over things, and various fight scenes. And that was the first audition that they used to whittle down to the final numbers. And then obviously from there, they chose 10. And then I did another production called the Mahabharata, and I played the lead role of Arjuna, who was a warrior. One of the interesting things about the characters that I'm cast as is that I'm usually cast as a very strong character, but there's always a small hint of vulnerability in there. And I think...
Right. Well, that makes it interesting. If you were just a tough guy all the time,
yeah,
you didn't have some flaws or vulnerability, it would be kind of like, we don't always want to see that, right? We want to see some humanity in the character.
Yeah. So that's what makes the interpretation of the characters interesting. So it's not just me going on camera or going on stage and playing like these bad guys. It's me playing these incredibly incredible bad guys on the outside, but underneath there's a psychological aspect of how do you tap into the vulnerability of that? How do you go through the muscular physique and the violence and the fighting, and you tap into what it is that makes this person human beyond that? How do you bring the emotion out of this person? And so in terms of the interpretation of the characters, I understand very well how to portray the strong characters on camera, because that is something that emanates quite naturally from me. But how I make the characters interesting and distinct from each other is that I look on the emotional vulnerability and the level of vulnerability of each character, and I'm able to use that aspect in terms of the emotional vulnerability to make the characters unique and to make them interesting. So Game of Thrones, for example, he was a warrior. He just freed his people, but he needed to go to my co-star Mina Ryan for comfort. And so in terms of portraying this character after the heartbeat came down, while I was in the scene with Mina Ryan, I was able to soften myself a little bit more. I didn't need to overplay the warrior aspect of it because my shirt was off, and my aesthetics did that for me. So I didn't need to tap into that so much. So in the second scene where I do get killed, I was able to tap into more of the emotional vulnerability and the uncertainty of the character in that scene. So it wasn't just like standing there being a tough guy, this kind of thing. I didn't need to do that. Like, my body spoke for me. I just had to be, and I just had to be vulnerable in that situation.
I would add anybody watching this who's an actor, every single role, that is a great backstory or development to do is, what is your character's flaw? What is their secret? What is their fear? Even if it never comes out in the script, you as an actor get to play that. That's part of the imagination. That's part of the development that we as a human, to bring a character to life in a three-dimensional way could be doing. Not every actor does it. And then sometimes it comes a little bit one note or one dimensional. But if you can find those things, it'll really make a difference in your acting performance.
And sometimes you don't even have to think about it. Like, you read the character's story and you feel it. You know, when you're in the scene, you don't have time to think about why you're feeling certain things. You just have to allow yourself to be there in the moment and to feel. But the important aspect is to, for me, you know, if I'm going to be playing all these tough characters, I have to be aware of the other aspects of the character. And once I identify the other aspects of the character, I allow myself to feel those emotions while I'm in the scene. So even if I'm being a tough guy, you know, there could be something in my eyes, like a squint or maybe a slight glance to the right, or something that indicates that I'm thinking about something else and that there's another aspect to this character that I'm portraying.
Oh my gosh. One of my favorite things, I teach acting too with Brave Maker. And one of my favorite things is acting is thinking. As an actor, your character has to have a thought process. And so when you get a script breakdown, so actors out there, when you get a script, your job is to figure out what else is being said underneath the lines, right? So
100%.
every good actor has something going on here. So when the camera is on and you have no lines, it's interesting to watch. People will say the best acting is listening or acting is reacting. But I really think if you can become a thoughtful person as a human, that will translate in your acting to be considered good acting, good performing.
Yeah, and the energy comes through your eyes. You know, you don't. It depends on the scene, but in scenes where, you know, there isn't a lot of like movement or even dialogue, you can have energy that comes through your eyes, and that gives information. You know, you don't even need to say anything beyond that, beyond what's in your eyes and what's on your face. There's a character that I just played called Cody in a film called Cabin Pressure, and that's on Amazon at the moment. And I'm in the film from beginning to end. It's mostly fight scenes, and I have like 2 pages of lines. Right, so the character didn't say that much. But what I did was that I leaned into that, and I made the character didn't say much, so and I put all the energy and resonance in. So this is the character Cody. So this is one of the scenes where I did actually speak. But outside of this, I just put the energy in the character's eyes, and I used moments of silence. Like right here, there's a pause in between when the girl speaks and when I speak. And so I used that moment of silence to create the tension, you know, to show that, you know, this guy's a little bit weird, to be honest, the character. And so that's how I played this part. It was fascinating playing Cody because all I did was fight, but I was in the film from beginning to end. So my job was to look brooding and to look menacing and to carry that energy with me throughout the film. So that the portrayal of Cody was really an expression of energy and emotion, with moments of silence and discomfort and weirdness. And of course, this is one of the fight scenes that I did. You know, still not speaking, but you know, just.
Well, it's kind of like Keanu Reeves in John Wick. He barely has any dialogue in there, and that's great. As a filmmaker, I'm trying to challenge myself because I love dialogue. I'm trying to challenge myself to write a little bit less. I'm trying to think if I can make a film where I can do more action and less dialogue as a challenge to myself, because it is an important thing. In TV, you see a lot of dialogue happening. In film, you can play a lot more with no dialogue. So that's really cool. Well, in our remaining time, Marcos, talk about what's next for you. What are the things that you got coming up and plans and hopes? And do you need for the social media world out there? Follow Marcos, the Marcos James on Instagram. Is how you can find Marcos. If you're looking to cast a brooding action kind of guy, he's the one you want to go for. But yeah, exactly. What's the future look like for you? What are you hoping for?
Yeah. So actually, I'm going to be in a television series titled The Family Business, playing the role of Candy, who is another gangster, kind of bad guy, kind of Cuban-esque kind of. That was the aesthetic of the character anyway. And the premiere of that is tonight, October 23rd. I'm not sure if I'm in the opening episode, but I'm definitely going to be in the series at some point. So for for Candy, for the role of Candy, I worked opposite Michael Jai White, and Emilio Rivera is also in the production. But it was interesting playing the role of Candy because I was Michael Jai White's antagonist in the scenes that we did. So I'm here and Michael is there, and it's just two of us, and we have like our henchmen on either side. And it was interesting going into that because there was no rehearsal for that role, and there was an extremely short turnaround between being cast. And so this is a family business. This is a trailer for the family business.
And it's on BET and Paramount, yeah?
It's on Netflix. Season
Oh.
1 to 4 is on Netflix, and then but the entire series is on BT Plus. So tonight when it premieres, it will be on BT Plus. So all right, so I'm coming up with Michael right now. So it's Michael and I in, we have a whole bunch of scenes, but it's just me and him. And it was interesting acting alongside him because there was no rehearsal, just thrown into it. There was like a day's notice between booking the role and then going into film.
Wow.
Turned up on set. And the reason why it was interesting for me is because I had to be the tough guy to Michael Jai White, but Michael Jai White in himself as an individual is he's a powerful person. So when he walks into a room, he has the ability to control the room. And that scene, the scenes that we did had a lot of fight scenes in it. I didn't have to fight him, but he did a lot of fight scenes. So he ended up directing quite a lot of it. So it was interesting staying in character and being the antagonist to somebody who was already so tough. So I had to make the distinction between me, the person, and me, the character, and to hold firm as the character opposite Michael Jai White and the strength of his character, etc. It went brilliantly, at the end, we because we hardly spoke before we went into filming, but right after, we shook hands and took pictures together and stuff. So that was an interesting role to play, and I enjoyed it very much. I loved it.
That's cool.
Playing
congratulations on that, Marcos. That's very cool. Very cool.
And I'm also doing a series, and he would kill me if I didn't mention this. So there's a series coming up called Goals, and I'm going to be playing the role of Grady King, and it's the filmmaker is getting ready to do the pilot right now, and I'm playing a talent agent. And again, the interesting thing with Grady King is that he is, on the outside, he's quite a nice person, but he kind of has like a shady personality. And there are quite a few talent agents and managers in Los Angeles, I think, who might fit that description. But so I'm going to lean into that aspect of the LA film and television industry to bring Grady King to life. And also I do know that they're looking for characters for the show. They need a character by the name of Ben, who I work with very closely in the series. And they're looking for another character called AO. And Goals is an interesting thing. It's gonna be kind of Euphoria-esque, but maybe a little bit more mature in the delivery. And it's about 5 close friends who move over from New York. They come to LA and they go through all the experiences that you go through in LA when you move to this, kind of interesting space. So lots of violence, lots of very HBO Max, put it that way. So they're looking for characters, 2 characters right now in particular, 2 male characters, Ben and AO, and the Instagram account is Goals Series. So if you follow me and then you type in Goals in my followers list, it will come up. But also they did like the post on your page to do with this interview. So look for Goals and shoot them a message if you want to get more information on the characters that they're looking for. And there's other stuff that I'm working on as well. I'm actually producing my own film. It's a horror film. The script is done. I have some attachments. I have a director of photography that's interested, and he's shot some really big horror films, including Hatchet series, and a whole bunch of things, and that's going quite well. Now we're going into the business aspect of it. Yeah. So that's
all right.
the synopsis.
Marcos, got a lot going on. I'm really glad that we got to connect on social. It's a great example of, utilizing Instagram, social media to build relationships and make connections. And I will definitely be tucking you away. I'm going to be down there in November. So if I got something, I'll definitely hit you up.
100%.
Yeah, dude. Congrats on the success. Keep going. Keep making things. Everybody else, as you're listening, follow the Marcos James on the Marcos James on Instagram. And this goals series, we'll make sure we tag it too if you're watching live or on the replay. And you're in LA, so building relationships with people in LA from the Bay is also very important for us at Brave Maker. Follow bravemaker.org on Instagram to keep connected to the things that we're doing. We usually do monthly events and film screenings. We have our Halloween party in the Bay happening October 25th with a special film screening of a new film called The Lemurian Candidate coming out on October 25th at 10:30 p.m. at the Century 20 Cinemark Theater in Redwood City. All right, Marcos, before we bail out, let's do our lightning round Brave Faves. I want to know your favorite thing of the week.
Brave Faves. TV shows, films, books, songs, technology, clothing, podcast, food, and more. These are a few of our favorite people, places, and things. Brave Faves.
All right, my favorite thing of the week. If you have not seen this film called One Battle After Another, get out there. Everybody is talking about it. I absolutely loved it. It was a great ride. It's Paul Thomas Anderson, Leonardo DiCaprio, Sean Penn. Talk about like action and adventure and fights and all sorts of things, car chases. It does not disappoint, and it's going to be a very buzzy film this year, and I'm sure Oscar talks as well. So One Battle After the Other. Go see it. Tiana Taylor, quite a cast and quite a wild ride. So go check it out. What about you, Marcos? What is your favorite thing of the week?
That film, actually, I saw that film, but my other favorite thing of the week is my roommate just came back from Sweden and brought me this chocolate bar.
Hey, food. Yes, that's right.
So that's my favorite thing of the week.
Well, for people who are listening and can't see, what is it? People who are just listening, what is it?
It's called the Marabou. And then it has some Swedish writing in it. But anyway, it's Marabou.
Swedish chocolate called Marabou. Yeah. Yes, I love it.
So I have a thing for these things, and it's there were 2 bars, and now there's only 1. So what happened to the
Eat it up. Well, that means you're going to the gym extra today. All right, everybody.
Yeah, I'll do that.
That's episode 309 with the Marcos James on Insta. Thanks a lot for being on the show today, Marcos. We'll stay in touch.
I appreciate it.
All right, take care. Everybody else, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget, Brave Maker is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we rely on your partnerships, your donations to do the work that we're doing, from our classes to our podcast to our film festival. We are able to create community, improve mental health for artists and makers of all kinds. And for our audiences, we are being able to share films that create meaningful conversations to life's most important topics. If you believe in this work, like 75 other people who donate every single month, please join. Give anywhere from $5 to $5,000. We would appreciate it at bravemaker.com/donate, or you can text the word Bravemaker to 44321. All right, and don't forget, our Halloween party is happening this Saturday, October 25th in Redwood City's Alhambra House. We have a spooky film festival happening at the Center for Creativity right alongside. It's all happening on Main Street in Redwood City. And then you can walk down to the Cinemark Theater on Middlefield to watch The Lemurian Candidate, an alien psychedelic trippy adventure movie. All right, everybody, if we can help you go after your dreams, you know where to find us. Go to bravemaker.com or on all the socials at bravemaker.org. And please mark your schedule, mark your calendar for our 8th annual film festival, which is in July 9th through the 12th. Brave stories change the world, and you are the story. We'll see you next time.
Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook at bravemaker.org. Like, subscribe, and share. To become a monthly donor, text the word BraveMaker to 44321 or go to bravemaker.com/donate.